18 of our podcast. In this episode, we will discuss the phenomenon that happens when physical, digital, and creativity collide. I'm with Tommaso Di Bartolo, the founder and CEO of Phygital, the startup laying the building blocks of spatial experience. How are you doing today, Tommaso?
Romeo, so good to see you again. In full operating mode as a startup, meaning moving fast, breaking things, and optimizing everything as we go. So, how are you today, Romeo?
Oh yeah, it's been fantastic so far, and yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the essence of Silicon Valley, right? Moving fast and breaking
Absolutely,
things.
absolutely. What are we talking about today? So, great title, by the way.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun. The idea is a little abstract, but we want to really go and dive deep into the spatial world and experience some of these things that are actually coming and some of the things that we are actually working on. So the first question that I want to ask you is how do you think the spatial changes the everyday thing that we experience, the activities that we do for our enjoyment, like going out for a coffee, reading a book, watching a movie. How does the spatial change these things?
Awesome question. Yeah, how does the dimension of physical digital, meaning spatial, impact our everyday life? Is exactly what we are double clicking on from a behavioral perspective, from a benefit perspective. We definitely, let's start top down. We do see that humanity, once humanity start understanding and therefore also accepting that so far whatever I've seen with my sheer eye has been physically limited, or better said, limited to the physical conditions, right? Which is, the environment has been, because of the physical limitations, always equally to everyone, equally to you, to me, right? When the humanity starts understanding that now with an overlay of information that is visually available, and also it's not just available but it's also interactive, that will create a new way of how we live our daily life, right? And in my book, the second book that I wrote and co-authored, right? I described that there's an extension of our new world, right? Of our world is allowing humanity to build, augment a new way on how we, the human beings, relate to other human beings, but at the same time also how we relate to places, and how we relate to what I call purposes, right? So in this new dimension, what we have is definitely two attributes, one or two attributes that are completely new compared to the traditional internet, which is on one hand space, right? So in the internet, because two-dimensional, because browser-based and screen-based, right, space was never an attribute that you had, right? And within that space, right, also within that lack of space in the internet, right, you don't have time, right? So now in this 3D slash 4D dimensional world that we are creating, that some of us are calling actually, the future, the next version of a traditional internet, right? It's you're going to have access to space, and so in a living in a volumetric way. When you live in a volumetric way, right, it becomes more seamless, more natural for us as a human being to perceive things. Right now, the things that we are going to perceive in spatial are going to be obviously more enriched, more going to be smarter. Right? Why? Because we are having capabilities now with technology, and that's exactly what we are doing, right? With large world model, right? To transform anything that you literally see into an interactive things, right? So today, you look at a table and it has a predefined value proposition. You sit there because usually you have some form of communion, some form of food, some form of reunion, right? And that's great, right? That's the main purpose of it. But now, with the layer of information that is not just visual but also interactive, and that changes. Yes, you still can sit there, but now you can transform it in a more creative way. Now every table can become either a ping pong table. Well, Tommaso, but can you not do it also today? Well, you can if you transform it, but you need again physical objects in order to transform it, which is the rackets, right, which is the net, the ping pong ball, right? But now in the near future, just with the simple recognition of that table through the digital world, through the digital lenses, right, it can be reasoned, meaning understood, that that table, because of the surface, right, and the location where it's placed, it could be transformed into something else, right? And therefore, basically, to answer your question, we are going to live our daily life will be, on one hand, much more bespoke and tailored to us. Like because obviously there will be this seamless integration because between us and places and purposes, and I'll get to purposes in a second, right? The world will be tailored, will be almost like, think of a filter, right? A filtered based on how I feel. Right. So if I today feel like having a jazzy EDM, an upbeat jazzy EDM, right, which can be maybe a bit flashy, a bit loud, right, or smooth, right, and maybe that translates into your environment having some background music, right, but also having some tones that are aligned with it, some activities that you can interact on this physical world, right? So the future will be truly bespoke, right? It will be, each and everyone will almost demand a world that we will be seeing, hearing, and touching, that will be more built for us rather than for everyone, right? The simplest
Right.
thing to understand is, again, today you have this version of the world, and I always give this example of, okay, wait a second, this is very, very, let's say, a default for everyone, and then you go here and say, hey, Viri, turn on the world. Whoops. And now I see, based on my current status of how I feel, of how I am, or I'm understanding, a world that would make sense to me. When I say it makes sense to me, I imagine truly a world where it understands you, and at the right time, at the right place, right, it presents you the right experience, the right model of experience, right? And when you combine this right time, right place, right experience, right, all of a sudden, things that you see around yourself, you're going to pay attention, right? Because it's going to be tailored to you, right? So yeah, so that's basically where we see that going. And that's when it comes to dimension of space, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why I like to say that we will be living rather than swipe, like living in this new spatial experience rather than swiping through the internet, right? So you will be living in the spatial experience, right? And then the other component that I keep on mentioning is, relationship to any kind of purpose. So any interaction that you now have, go back to the same example with the table. Well, the question is, where was the table? Was the table in a restaurant? Okay, it wasn't a restaurant. What is the semantic data of the restaurant? Was it an Italian restaurant? Was it an historic restaurant? Was it a Chinese restaurant? Was it an Indian restaurant? So you extrapolate metadata and information that are relevant to the location, to that very specific spot, to that very specific element, that now becomes information that is of value to you, right? So if I am on UC Berkeley campus because I teach, 3 times a week, right? Now, what is UC Berkeley campus? In a metadata, in a semantic data understanding? Well, it's academics. Okay, so Tommaso is related to academics. Yes, check. Tommaso is related to academics where? Okay, that's in California. Oh, Tommaso is related to? Oh, UC Berkeley, that is one of the, if not the public university that has the most innovation-related subjects. Okay, so innovation doesn't make sense. So now, instead of being a location, it becomes a smart information, and therefore the purpose of what you have interacted with and lived within becomes now part of your DNA. So we are going to live our life within this spatial environment, and while we live our life, whatever we interact with, spend time with, dedicate attention to, becomes part of our identity. And so our identity is the result of what we do, right? Which today we are already kind of doing, but we don't have the method of tailoring this information or collecting that information, right? So for instance, going back to Tommaso, a dude that, was born and raised the south of Europe, to be specific, in Sicily, and then was blessed in his life to live in a couple of places, right? And therefore he learned the one or the other language, right? And, when people ask you, You just mentioned, yeah, I've been living here and there, but what does it mean? Like, how did that shape my DNA, and what does it mean based on
Right,
my,
right, right. Yeah.
right? And all this
Mhm.
amount of information in the spatial world, because you're living within the spatial world, now this information can be repurposed purposefully for you to live a more enhanced day in a life within the physical digital dimension.
Amazing. Yeah, this sounds fascinating. So, how do you think this affects and influences human behavior, or in general, what is the psychological impact of this?
It's interesting because if we talk about innovation in general, you always have, let's say, two main pillar that collide. One is the evolution of needs that we have from a new generation, and now we are looking of Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and actually Gen Beta, that in a couple of years, will be starting, as we discussed in one of the previous episodes. They're going to be, in 5 years, 5, 6, 7. So they're going to interact with this new dimension, right? So evolution of needs, right? And you see that definitely, millennials have different needs than Gen Z when it especially comes how they have been digitally interacting with each other, right? So to be specific, the gaming industry has been over the last decades flying through the roof, and the social media, but the underlying network effects, they were built to purposefully serve the needs of that generation, right? Which was Gen Z and the millennials, right? Now Gen Alpha and Gen Beta, they have different needs. They want to be more transparent. They want to know what the data we do with the data. They want to see how they can be of help for the world. So they have a way more intrinsically altruistic need, rather than, hey, I want to be the influencer, right? Which was big now the last 25 years. So there is no discussion that the Gen Z, as the in general Gen Z slash the needs are impacted by the technology that is shaped. So new needs, evolution of technology, and then evolution of technology impacts the behavior, right? And it's almost kind of a yin and yang going back and forth. I have new needs, then innovators and investors come up and say, hey, what if we create new technology? Then the new technology evolve, like such as the blue ocean strategy that we are approaching, right? Or pattern breaking strategy that we are approaching. I mean, who has ever done a Canva on top of the real world that is bespoke, right, for us to live in? It doesn't exist. So we need to
Yeah.
have this approach, right? And that will shape then, Romeo, also the behavior, right? It will become almost like an expectation. What do I mean with that, right? So at the beginning, humanity does not expect the thing that they don't know, right? And the famous, if I'm riding a horse, I'm not expecting a car, right? Or if I'm writing a book, I'm not expecting a printing press, right? Or if I have a lamp, I don't expect a decentralization of energy, right? A network. So all these things you don't expect. But once you have them, I say, wait a second, now I have a lamp. Now I'm expecting the lamp, right? And so we are seeing that we are moving into a more pleasant way, a more fun way, a more joyful way. Honestly, we're moving towards a more edifying way of living our life. Why, Thomas, are you using this verb, this adjective edifying, right? Because right now it has been very draining on this current generation, because it has been demanding from us being all the time accepted, because we have built a system where you always confront yourself, winner takes all mentality, games. I need to be in a spotlight, and whatever I say, I need to say correctly because I can get bullied. It drains your energy, right? So in the spatial environment, especially what we are building, right, is where you can contribute and collaborate. It's where diverging really from an individualistic behavior towards a collaborative behavior, right? And going back to your original question, how is this impacting, right? It's impacting for you to live more at ease. And there are three ingredients that we have through execution, learning, and readapting truly built into the fundamentals and the redefinition of of this behavioral physical digital engagement. Number one is that well, humanity loves to be outside, but they expect to have also the digital benefits. So wow, physical digital overlay, that's one ingredient, right? So that's, you know, that's the pancetta when you do this, the the carbonara, right? And I couldn't resist. I need to always flip it into some food
Yeah,
related
always
example.
plug some Italian foods.
Exactly, exactly. So that's the kind of the, let's put it in plain vanilla, in plain English, right? That's the bacon, right? So going outside, but the
Mhm.
physical digital. Then the second thing is the behavioral part, which we're shifting from an individualistic behavior into a group behavior, right? So wow, we are empowering groups. We are supercharging groups. To do what? Well, to be within this physical digital dimension and together explore it and create, which leads me to the point number three. And the point number three is that empower the user to be creative. Why? Because the self-expression for Gen Z and Gen Alpha is a fundamental need. So instead of you serving something that is finished, you want to empower them to say, hey, yes, there is this physical digital layer, but you build it, you create it, you do it with others, right? So and that is, that entire three pillar strategy, again, physical digital, individualistic versus collaborative, so group behavior and self-expression, that transforms the carbonara, and now we have to finish dish, right, into a more playful way of living, Romeo, right?
Fantastic. And actually, this actually takes me back to the point, as you said, this will let people live with more at ease. That's where the social media comes in, right? With all the social validation, all the vanity metrics. That's what leads you to believe that you cannot live by being yourself. You have to be the best at something. And if you cannot reach that goal organically, then you have to fake it, you know. And that the fake it till fake it till you make it kind of personality comes in as well. And so if that pressure subsides, then everything becomes much more enjoyable in terms of the digital environment, the spatial environment.
Yeah, attention over the last 25 years has been built upon a tactic that is one to many, right? Only a few have been able to reach and crack the algorithm methods and therefore get visibility, and the majority are just consumer of it. And by the way, amazing, great, that is the evolution of media. That's the reason why I say I love social media, but let's not overemphasize the word social, because there is nothing of being social. Or let me put it in very respectful words, we have accepted the fact that that are the limits, that how we can socialize digitally, right? So, and you know, it needs a bunch of crazy minds like we at Fidget to say, wait a second, we have never been digitally social, and we believe it so much, and we are exactly now redefining it, right, from the ground up, and saying, now how can we build something that creates a more collaborative way of being social, right, which redefines also how you connect with others, how you foster community in general, right? Yeah. Mhm.
Amazing. So, yeah, so I now want to shift the conversation slightly to a related topic, but slightly in a different direction. So every aspect of our life today is recorded. It's basically everything is on display. A lot of it is on display on social media. Right now, what we are doing is going to be recorded for posterity. So now my question is, with spatial, we go much further than that. We eternalizing experiences, co-creating moments. So, how do you see memories and legacies preserved in the spatial world?
I do truly believe that there is, again, talking about needs, this current generation, Gen Z, maybe stronger Gen Alpha, and I think once we get to the Gen Beta that were born this year, right, it will be demanded that they own their data. Like today, talking about the data ownership, and by the way, I'm not talking about cryptocurrency, right? I'm talking about you as a human being having the rights, the fundamental rights of owning data. It's the same thing of saying, you know, if I sign, if I sign a house, right, it is my house, right, and if I have that house, I dedicate more time, I reinvest in the house, right? It starts meaning something to me. I think that that understanding is not there yet from a human being. Why? Because we are used over the last, again, 25, 30 years, right? That, we rent the digital time. We rent time within the digital space. Like we say, okay, we do something, right, towards this digital space, but whatever we do contribute towards others. And again, over the next years, we will be having a very strong demand of, no, wait a second. If I am here and create a digital footprint, then that digital footprint belongs to me. And because it does now belong to me, I can do whatever I want with it because it becomes an asset to me, right? And I think that we are now in this phase of maturing into that direction. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because you say, well, Tommaso, we are eternalizing things. We are having, again, digital footprints, obviously, because it is more digital, right? But now what is going to be shifting is that the data is going to be yours, right? So especially when it comes to what happens to the data, that has been an issue, right? An issue that insofar the especially the social media world, the business case for the social media world, and the way that has been growing is that 95% have been a digital advertisement, right, of their revenues, right? But if you now look in their balance sheet, right, and when I say they, primarily, obviously, the Googles and the Facebook of this world that are the primarily two largest online advertisement platforms, right? You no longer see double digits growth. Why? Because they were built this method was built for a different generation, and this current generation highly dislikes this business model. By the way, not to confuse with they love brands. They love their Nikes, they love the Louis Vuittons, they love their Prime drinks, like they love brands, okay? But they dislike the way that they're being approached. Now, what is shifting is a more human-centric approach of you enjoying and creating your digital world, right? So imagine a near future in 5-6 years time where you say, no, this is my right to have the data. And when I have the data, I can start now as a human being opting in or allowing others to get in touch with me if I allow that, right? Which right now is vice versa. Right now it's more, okay, whomever has the deepest pockets, right? They create advertisement or some form of advertisement. And because they have deep pockets, they reach through those platforms and through their eyeballs, right? Boom, that won't be working in the near future, right? Now, that is what I foresee. I foresee first an understanding that the data is going to be mine, right? And with that understanding, you will be having at the end of the day the rights management of your data. I do believe, Romeo, that the digital property right, meaning the right for me as a human being to own my data, will be one of the most fundamental rights that we're still going to have understood in by the end of this decade, right? So that will be a fundamental shift when it comes to data ownership, how I think about the data, and then therefore, well, I pleasantly going to be creating data. Why? Because whatever I do create, I own, right? And
Yeah.
whatever I own, right, I can have a benefit from it. And as a matter of fact, in my last book, chapter number 7, I talk there. I speak there and about the topic of JVC, which is the joint value creation. That will shift and create a new economy, an
Yeah.
economy between the user-centric, a human-centric economy where we are going to be interacting with brands and other users, but the creation of that economy begins with the user starting developing and contributing in this physical digital world, and whomever else collaborates receives a shared model of what they create, rather than, again, winner takes all.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you get to have a choice whether you want to keep your data private, or if you want to monetize it, then you have all of the options or how you want to monetize it. Nobody is
Right on.
controlling anything, right?
Right
That
on.
sounds fascinating, and I can't wait to actually start experiencing all of these developments sooner rather than later. As always, thanks for your time, Tommaso. And if for everyone who is watching this, please, you can see the QR code at the left, right, left top corner. Go there, scan it, join our Discord group, sign up for our waitlist for the free version 03, and we'll see you in the free world.
Right on. See you in the video. Thank you, Romeo, as always.